All right, guys, just another little discussion that we need to have. One of the biggest areas that men tend to have problems with as well when it comes to sex is romance. And you need to understand that romance really is the oil that lubricates the wheels of love. It's kind of the love potion. A woman by nature is made for romance, while a man was created to be romantic. We just need to remember that it's okay for us to be romantic, and we need to find out what it takes for us to be romantic with our wife.
And I would chime in there and say, guys, when you're pursuing your lady and you're on the hunt, and after you grab her, don't quit being romantic like you were before. That's one of the biggest complaints for women after they get married. Oh, but he bought me flowers before, and he did this and he did that. And once we're married, never happens. So remember that thought.
And no matter how much you know about the definition of romance, if you don't understand the intimate needs of your wife, your wife herself, you're never going to get it right. Couple of things on romance. You have to develop a real long-range view, not a short-term view. I mean, you want to be looking, well down the road, well past probably where the point in time when most people even wonder, do people really think about sex when they're that old? But I've seen this. One of the things that I've seen demonstrated in my grandfather and my grandmother's life. My grandfather's 94 years old, and my grandmother is 81. But I just don't see any romance in their life. It's just about like getting through each day. And I thought, man, I've been around for a long time, and in all the years I've been around, I've really never seen romance demonstrated in their life. And I thought, that's something that I want to be 94 and still hope that there's some romance in my life. So keep that long range view in mind. Romance is knowing that you are still being pursued. So. Like Theresa said, your wife will really want to know that she is still the apple of your eye, and still that you are still constantly pursuing her. And the real icing on the cake on this one is that romance really does enhance your physical intimacy. So keep that in mind. We need to, our bodies are kind of like combination locks, and you really got to get the combination right on the romance side, or it doesn't work. And I really wish that we had the love language discussion when we first got married, because man, I just think to myself, man, there's like 12 years that I wouldn't have suffered through those years if I'd had that love language.
That little card.
Man, just that little bit of paper. And I'm a voracious reader, and I thought, geez, all those books I read, and still didn't get me there. I mean, the only book that I can remember when I was young that I had was, and it had a Jaws cover on it, and it was everything you wanted to know about sex, but were afraid to ask. And believe me, that didn't even come close to what life was all about when it came to sex. Understand that what you think may arouse or excite your spouse may be a complete turnoff to her. So, talk her love language, guys. Find out what that love language is. Commit it. Burn it in your memory, because it'll make life a lot easier for you. One thing alone should govern sex, and that's agape love. Agape love seeks the highest good of the one who is the object of your affections. So really, it's truly knowing about your spouse. Love is more concerned about caring for the object of its desire than having its own needs met. So again, guys, remember, it's not about meeting your needs, it's about meeting the needs of your spouse. And a lot of the stuff we keep repeating ourselves, there's a reason that we keep repeating this, because it's the stuff that works. Consequently, sex practice according to the biblical description of sex, of love and in obedience to it, will be very mutually gratifying. 4 things are necessary for romance, and I'm just going to touch on these real quick because these are in the handout material, right?
They were, yeah.
Okay, the 4 things are planning. Make sure that you plan beforehand. Guys, do whatever it takes to turn your wife's switch on. Make sure you know what it takes to get there. You know, you don't want to get started and then have the breaker pop. So you might be a little disappointed. Timing. Before you start making your moves, make sure you answer a few questions. Find out what kind of day she had. She could have had the worst day in her life, and sex is as farthest thing from her mind as you possibly could be. Time. Think, prepare for things. Think about taking her out to dinner, preparing the meal, whatever you need to do. Stay home. Send the kids to the movie. Prepare a nice bath for her, whatever it may take. But I think actually one of the biggest things as well is being tender, and the tenderness that comes with is just so important when it comes to a woman. She wants to tell you how she feels. She wants to be sure you're listening. We talked about that a couple of times. Kind of give her some feedback so that she knows you are listening. And that's a real way to get into her heart.
And I just want to touch on a few things for us women. Culture depicts men as a bunch of clods who have no desire to be romantic. And actually, that's not the truth. In one of the books that I have for women only that I'm going to show you ladies, that is an incredible book. In fact, I've had, and Susan has had, her daughter that's not even married yet read the book, because it tells us so much about what men are really like. And most men feel that they are secret romantics. They do not experience nearly as much intimacy in their relationship as they would like. Even more surprising is that they separate it from sexual intimacy. I mean, it's not always connected like we think it is. So we ask, well, if they're romantic, then why don't they do anything? Well, it's because they feel unsure of themselves. And it may be by how we act or something that somebody said to them. So they're not confident. And for men, confidence is a huge issue. And there tended to be 3 concerns when they did the interviewing of men about being romantic. And these were the 3 things that caused them to hesitate. 1, I won't do a very good job. 2, I'm haunted by romantic failures. And 3, it's difficult to change gears. So if we as women can be in tune to that and realize that our men have a romantic side and we need to be open to that. Almost every man says he needs to compress somehow before he can think about being a romantic, loving husband. And so one of the suggestions that I have is that you give your husband that time when he comes home from work to just take a 15, 20-minute nap to recoup. I know for Les, it used to be one of the things that irritated me. And until I really found out that it was really good if I let him just go into his chair and sleep for 15 or 20 minutes because it changed the whole evening, then it was like, well, man, I get benefit out of this. Why should I be complaining? So it really is. I mean, they've worked hard all day. They're all tight, strung up. Give them their little space to wind down. So we ask, what does romance really mean? Well, the dictionary defines it as being romantic. And then you look up romantic and it says the act of romance. So let's just go in a circle. Nobody really knows what it is. We do know it's something that doesn't happen just once a year. And you know what? That's why Valentine's Day is one of the hardest days. Because that's the day you have to be romantic even if you don't feel like it. Because everybody else is sending everybody else something. So 3 elements that put romance into your marriage, ladies, are self-initiated pursuit. We need to understand that our husbands are not supposed to always be the pursuer, that we can do that and that they appreciate that. Create a communication of value to them. When we value them and they know it, it tends to help them be more romantic. And speak love in the language in your spouse. Again, here we come back to love language. It's just as important for us women as it is for men. One of the ways, here are some of the ways that Les and I kind of do some things with romance. One of the things that we've always committed to is on our anniversary, we always leave town. I mean, even when our kids were little, from the first year we got married, we always said, no matter what, we were leaving town on our anniversary.
We didn't leave them by themselves.
Well,
but.
no. No, we didn't do that. But we have some incredible memories. One of my favorite places to go is Uray. We love the Christmas house bed and breakfast. It's like going away to a spot that the whole world has just gone in slow mode. And we love it. We can just do absolutely nothing except have lots of sex. And it's awesome. I mean, it's so relaxing. It's almost like you don't want to get in the car and drive back home because you're going, oh my gosh, I have to come back to all this. Another really cool thing that the ladies in the office give me a hard time about is he has started a tradition about 5 years ago where I don't just get one Valentine's Day card. I get at least 14 because he starts sending them to me on February 1st. And some of them are a little risque, but they are fun. And so when I bring him into the office and I show the ladies, oh my gosh, we get some of the best giggles out of the card. I can't show the guys in the office, but I can show the ladies. Another thing that we do is send emails to each other. And basically, what our emails are used as a safe place. We don't talk about what is bothering us, what's hurt, such as a sample. And I get really excited because if I come to work, I always want to check my email. One of the samples of ones he said it says, "Good morning. I hope this email finds you wonderful this morning. I'm so thankful that the Lord has blessed me with you. What a truly amazing wife you are. Each day I am reminded of all that you do for me and how much you've helped me in bringing me closer to the Lord. Always remember that you have all my love and you are never far from my heart. I love you." Well, now you want to talk about make my day? That makes my day. And, it's just awesome to think that something that simple communicates such a powerful message. Another fun little thing I have on my desk, and this is back from 2003. It says, "Good morning, beautiful Mr. Romantic here. Have a wonderful day. I love you, me." And this is kind of a private inside joke about a marriage ministry night that we had, and people always tease Les about being Mr. Romantic, and that night he didn't pass the test. So this was the note I got the next day to remind me that he was still Mr. Romantic.
I failed in that one time. I'm like, what? Another one of when you start doing something like this, that should be a safe area as well. That's like when I send Theresa an email. When I only communicate positive things to her or things of romance via email. I'll never send her an email to chew her out or tell her I'm upset with her or something along those lines, because I've created that's like I said, that's kind of a safe area. So on the romance side, you need to have those little safe havens and don't cross the line in using those to do something else in your relationship. So keep that in mind.
We're going to talk a little bit about the definition of love. Love, as the world uses it, includes an expectation of getting something in return. The Bible tells us about another kind of love, and Les kind of touched on it. It's agape love. It's unconditional and it's irrevocable. Agape love gives without measuring the cost or seeking personal advantage. It's not natural, it's supernatural, because we're not designed to give of ourselves like that. It's a love that's poured out in a beautiful abundance, seeking nothing but our highest goods, and it does not depend on our actions. Because if it depended on our actions, believe me, Les would not love me very much, because that just happens to be the way that life is. One of the probably most incredible experiences I could tell you about in him showing me agape love is I have dealt with depression a major portion of my life as an adult. It was not something that I really addressed until farther into our marriage. I didn't share it with him, and I didn't really want to deal with it myself. But when it came to the point that I had to deal with it and be medicated for it, it was really hard for me because it doesn't fit my personality. It's not what I'm all about. And Les didn't understand it. If you've never been there, it's very difficult to understand what depression is and how it affects you. And it didn't just affect me, it affected my whole family. And probably it was probably one of the worst spots in my whole life was I ended up on the 3rd floor at St. Mary's. And it wasn't because I had tried to commit suicide, I just was at a point in my life where I didn't want to wake up anymore. It was just, life wasn't enjoyable for me. I mean, I had an awesome husband, I had great kids, all those things, but I just didn't want to be here. And I will never forget the hug that I received on the 3rd floor of St. Mary's when he finally got to come up past the locked door. He'll tell you it was a really scary time. And he called our pastor, and he's sitting down there waiting, having no idea what's going on from the time I hit ER in the ambulance. What I'd done basically was quit eating and drinking for about 4 to 5 days. And so my body just shut down. And I ran away. And they found me. And he wouldn't let go of me. And at that moment in my life, I knew that no matter what we had to deal with, he was going to be there for me. That's how much he loved me. It didn't matter that I was dealing with something awful like depression, or that it could have a label, or that he didn't understand it. It was truly agape love. It was unconditional. And that to me has been such a testimony in my life of the love that God has put in his heart for me, because I know that's not humanly possible. It would be really easy for him to walk away, and people do. I understand it because I've lived this, and my family's lived through it. And so I thank God for the privilege of agape love, because I still have a husband here today because of it. Emotions do not and will never sustain your marriage. We have to be committed. And sometimes we don't feel like we're in love, but that's not what it's about. We're committed to make it work. Marriage doesn't necessarily make people happy. That's not, we hear that, but that's not necessarily true. We just need to remember that when we serve each other with agape love, the fertile soil that's in our hearts, that God is growing things there that we'll never understand. And that's the way he's designed it. And that's the most incredible kind of love you could ever have for your spouse.
Okay, guys, one of the other things that, just a few basics that I'm going to touch on. And the big one is the honeymoon. This is a time when you really need to take really good care of your wife at a real crucial time. And one of the things that I often tell, and the guys will talk about it when we're over together, you don't need to make a big huge conquest on your marriage night. I mean, and in fact, it may be even best if you didn't have sex. So keep that in the back of your mind. But the objective of the first few weeks, when you're getting to know each other intimately after you've been married, should be the development of a real loving intimacy. As the wife learns to experience, truly being comfortable with you, and demonstrate, and as you learn to demonstrate a lot of self-control. One of the things that came up when we were preparing this particular talk, and one of the key points was that more time should be spent in planning and preparing for your honeymoon than you do in planning and preparing for your wedding. So that's again, and all the stuff that I've read over the last 20 years, that's something that I'd never even thought of. I thought, really how awesome that truly is. Guys, I really have to give you a lot of encouragement not to be goal-oriented in the love-making side of the equation, on your honeymoon. So keep that in mind. And in fact, there was, I know we haven't seen it on one of the Smalley tapes, but that came to be a big issue with one of the Smalley boys when he got married. So In fact, they almost got a divorce after their honeymoon. So keep that in mind. The husband's purpose on the wedding night should be, like I said, to truly develop that emotional intimacy. And if it happens through physical closeness, that's great as well. You need to be making sure that you express tenderness, romance, words, warmth, cuddling, all of those things that are necessary that really put your wife at ease. And this also applies if you've been married before with previous sexual encounters. It should be a fresh start where you're starting all over, and make it a wonderful experience for both. The one flesh concept, several hindrances have truly blocked the learning process of lovemaking. It's, your relationship is not like what you see oftentimes on television or what you read in a novel that suggests that it all comes naturally, because it doesn't all come naturally. People, get defensive about what they do know, what they don't know, and the skill that you may have or may not have, and so that's one of the things, like I say, you really need to take the time. It's a learning process. And yes, there's going to be some trial and error involved, and what works and what doesn't work. And the big thing on this, guys, just remember, women are definitely a crock pot. And you guys are Carnation instant breakfast. So it takes a long time to get the woman ready. And I like the idea. Somebody said, guys are like a microwave. I'm like, no way. You don't even need to put electricity to it. Just it's just like Carnation instant breakfast, out of the package into the cup. So, but God in His great wisdom created most women to be very slowly aroused, more slowly aroused than men. So keep that in the back of your mind, and remember to give and to receive reciprocal attention in a way that both you and your wife are satisfied.
Les has touched on physical intimacy, and actually, intimacy is not just physical. It carries over into every aspect of our life, emotionally, spiritually. It doesn't just have to be sex. It can be cuddling. It can be holding hands. It can be just the way that you look at each other. How you feel, what's in your heart. Some of the factors that hinder the development of sexual intimacy in any marriage, the habit of criticism, bottled up anger and resentment, failure to communicate, lack of trust in one's partner, your spouse, anxiety about one's physical appearance. This was a huge one for me when we were first married. And actually when I was in some counseling with some of the things that I was going through from my previous divorce, I had a session with my counselor, and I was just explaining to her, oh man, I like the light shut off all the time. I don't want, if we're going to have sex, it's only at night in the dark. And if it's during the day, boy, close all the blinds, make sure everything's dark, and I was very self-conscious, and that's normal for women, but I was excessively self-conscious about my body. And so she looked at me and she says, Theresa, do you think that your husband goes to bed with a tape measure and measures every part of your body? And I looked at her and I thought, no, he doesn't. But in my mind, it was like, oh God, my thighs are big, this is flabby, this is whatever. And it was like, no. I had to get to the point where I realized that when my husband looked at me, it wasn't just the physical part, he was seeing what was in my heart, the things that we had shared that made us close and intimate, not just the physical aspect of it. And what happens is that when I went through those periods in my life and became so focused, those are actual danger zones for women. Because when we become so focused on our physical appearance, even though it is important for us to take care of ourselves for our spouse and how we look, but when we become too focused, it can lead us into dangerous territory. And I have walked really close to that dangerous territory in traveling and finding myself in circumstances where I had been so concerned about how I looked that when I wound up in those places, I was scared to death. And so I encourage you to have a healthy balance of how you feel physically, and that as husbands, that's not the main focus of what you do with your wife, is her physical appearance to you.